This is Free Talk Live. It's your show, Saturday edition. You can bring up anything normally, though right now we've got a special guest that's on the line with us, so calls for him will be given priority. But then after that, we'll be back to the normal format where you can call in about anything at 800-259-9231. That is the SACL CAI toll-free line. It's 1-800-259-9231. As always, Ian with you.
And Mark.
And you can join us online at freetalklive.com. The features, they're free, so enjoy those on us. Again, that's freetalklive.com, and this segment of the program brought to you by the Free State Project. From creating new and old media to political action to civil disobedience and market-based activism, you'll find more pro-liberty activism than you might have ever imagined possible when you move to New Hampshire as part of the Free State Project. Learn more at freestateproject.org. That's freestateproject.org as we go to a man who is pretty familiar with the whole Free State Project movement. He has spoken at least one, if not two, I think, of the Free State
Liberty Forums.
Yeah, two Free State Project Liberty Forum events. His name is Ron Paul. You might know him as Dr. or Representative Ron Paul. Ron Paul, you're on Free Talk Live. Always nice to talk to you.
Thank you. Nice to be with you.
Indeed. So you're – yes, Mark.
Well, I was just going to say, Ron Paul, you have a bit of legislation that's going on right now that's probably the most exciting bit of legislation at the federal level, and that's not saying much, in the last decade or so. Could you tell us about the Audit the Fed bill?
Yes, we are doing pretty well. Somebody was poking a little fun at me, I guess, because they went back and found out that in 1980 I did the same thing but only had 18 co-sponsors. But today we have 273 co-sponsors. Every Republican has co-sponsored it, and it's building momentum in the Senate, and it's up to about 16 in the Senate. And we have, I think, about 92 Democrats on it. So it's come along quite well.
Why now, Ron? Why is the interest burgeoning at this point as opposed to back in the 80s or previously?
I think it's a combination of things. I think the presidential race helped call attention to the American people the issue of money in the Federal Reserve, because I talked about it all the time. But I think that was only minor compared to the crisis that just has broke out about the same time, and people got worried and concerned, and they heard about TARP funds and these hundreds of billions of dollars Congress appropriating and then not knowing where the money went. So the people then started demanding a little bit more accountability, and the Congress did wake up to a degree, and now they're trying to scurry around and find out where the money did go, and they're having a little trouble. But it was at that time that I said, yes, that's very important. We shouldn't have given them the money in the first place. We should find out where it's going. But you're dealing with only a small amount compared to what the Fed deals with. They deal with trillions of dollars. They've been doing it for years, and they're really a government unto itself. And I think those concerns caught on. The American people responded, at least in a large enough number, to encourage their congressman to sign on to the bill.
Well, it's hard for me to get really excited about anything significantly coming as far as a pro-freedom change to Washington, D.C. But let's say it happens, Ron. Let's say this thing goes through. Let's say the Audit the Fed bill goes through and it even gets signed by Barack Obama, and the audit happens, and everybody finds out that after all the numbers have been crunched, that the Federal Reserve is a big scam, and it's stealing money, and it's inflating the money supply and doing all these horrible things. What's next? What's the next step?
Probably depends on how the dollar is doing. If the dollar's still surviving as it is right now, the financial system has collapsed, and we don't have economic growth. But people are clinging to dollars because they don't know what to do. Now, if they lose confidence in the dollar about the time we have the audit and we find out exactly what they've been doing, there will be even more hostility directed, toward the central bank. Today, the hostility rightfully is being directed toward the Congress, but they're also interested in the Federal Reserve. So if you have a dollar crisis and you start seeing interest rates skyrocketing and prices going up, and then you find out exactly how the Fed was manipulating and what kind of agreements they made with Goldman Sachs and other companies, as well as what kind of bailouts they've done with overseas operations, when that time comes, if it gets bad enough, you have to have a new currency. You have to have a new system because all paper currencies eventually end. Mm-hmm. The big problem is you don't know when that'll come. If you had a dollar crisis and an audit all at one time, it could come rather quickly, and people would demand change. but they're more likely to poke or avoid the audit, or they'll water it down, and the dollar may hang in there for a little while longer. So we can't say exactly how long they're going to get away with what they're doing.
But, Ron, are you proposing another government-issued currency, or are you talking about maybe letting the market handle this finally?
Well, my proposal has always been to just allow competing currencies to legalize competition, to legalize the Constitution, because as much as I disapprove of the Fed, I don't think it would be of any benefit that if somebody had the authority, they close the Fed down tomorrow. That's sort of like saying, well, tomorrow we will close the post office down and we're not going to pick up the pieces. Well, but if you had competition with the post office, it might not last very long.
As you probably know, the guys over at the Liberty Dollar were raided back in 2007, so they gave it their best shot to offer some competing currency in the marketplace, and the government came in and stole all their silver and their gold. So. Right,
and that goes to show where the courts are, because the courts generally never rule in favor of sound money. They always rule in favor of paper currencies and central banks. But I think there's a more interesting case going on in Dallas where the company took silver dollars, which are called legal tender for $1. The new silver 1 ounce.
Yeah.
The company you referred to actually declared it $1, so that was encroaching on the sacred monopoly of government money. But this is government money, so I think this is very interesting. It was a hung jury the first time and the second go-round. But I'm also convinced they would never say, yeah, you won. Anybody who wants to use silver dollars now can do it. Even if they did, Congress the next day would have to clarify it, because nobody would be paying any more taxes. We'd all just take our pay in silver dollars. And,
now, Ron, there's a lot of interest here from our callers. They want to talk to you. They've got a lot of questions, so I'm hoping that I know that we can have you till 9 o'clock, right?
That's
Eastern time.
Top of the hour.
Eastern time. Yeah, the top of the hour.
My time. Yeah,
You're in Texas.
I can go to the top of the hour.
Okay, excellent. Because I definitely want to get some of these calls in here. But let's say that, so if the Audit the Fed thing goes through, and of course it's going to reveal bad news, then we go to some sort of alternative, allowing the marketplace to provide currency, making that legitimate. That would be great. But let's say it doesn't go through. Let's say it just doesn't make it for whatever reason. The Senate knocks it down, or Obama knocks it down, and it's dead in the water at that point. How about a piece of legislation, and I'm not a federal government guy here, but how about a piece of legislation that dissolves the union? Could you implement something like that?
To dissolve the union?
Yeah.
Well, it really was there at the beginning. It was assumed all the time that we as states, colonies, came together voluntarily, and we always had the right to leave. New England knew all about that, and they assumed that was the case, and of course the South assumed it too, but that has all been canceled out. So I don't think that will be a very easy move to make, but I think it's something else will probably happen. Instead of making it a violent separation and flaunt the separation, I just think it'll be just a sort of a subtle walking away.
Yeah.
What can the government do if their money doesn't work anymore? What happens if they print all this money and they send it out to the beneficiaries, the Social Security beneficiaries, and it doesn't buy anything? What if they keep trying to bail out places like California, since most states will be in the same trouble as California? It won't work. So it might be that there will be no big deal. There will be no big declarations. There will be no announced nullifications. There will be no legal matter. People will just walk away.
Yeah, just stop participating.
I think some people have already started to walk away, but I wouldn't say that I know anybody like that.
I can say I have because I'm just not interested in it. It was good for the Soviet Union to break up, and I think it'd be good for this one too. Ron Paul, hang on. We're going to bring you back here in a moment, and we'll be wall-to-wall phone calls, your calls for Ron Paul here in the remaining segment of this hour. We've got him till the end of the hour. So if you're on the line, odds are good you're going to get to talk to him. If you're not on yet, it's a crapshoot. But you can try. 800-259-9231. We'll see how many. Just make sure you break down your question quickly. No essays for Ron Paul. Break it down quick. Get the question out. That way we can get through as many people as possible to talk to Ron Paul here in moments. At 800-259-9231. This is Free Talk Live. This This is Free Talk Live, your show. You bring up anything, though questions for Ron Paul or what we're doing for this segment here. Otherwise, if you've got something else, we'll get to you here coming up in Hour 3. 800-259-9231 is the number. Tonight it's Ian with you.
And Mark.
And you can join us online at freetalklive.com. Hey, if you like this show and you want to help support Free Talk Live, shop with us. Just go to amazon.freetalklive.com. When you enter Amazon through that link, Free Talk Live gets a percentage of your purchase. That's all there is to it. Just start your shopping at amazon.freetalklive.com. Ron Paul, are you still there, sir?
I am here.
Good to have you. You are in Texas at this time?
I am.
Excellent. Yes. So we're just going to get right into these phone calls. We have a lot of people with questions, and hopefully they will make those questions come out quickly. So let's start with the amplifier line and talk to Jeff in New York. Jeff, you're on with Ron Paul.
Hi, Dr. Paul. How you doing?
Doing fine, thanks.
Go ahead.
I just want to let you know, I'm a huge fan. I'm a supporter of Campaign for Liberty and the Mises Institute, and I voted for you.
Get to the question, Jeff. I'm sorry, man. We got to get to the question.
I just wanted to say that, that was all before I read some things in the Ron Paul political reports in the 70s and 80s and 90s that had some really not so nice things to say about, blacks and Hispanics and homosexuals. And I know you said you didn't write those reports, but, why was your name on there? And do you still support all those things that were said in there?
Thank you for the call.
No, I didn't write them, and I don't support them, and that's been rehashed many, many times.
Yeah, I'm surprised he even brought that up. You certainly addressed that during the presidential campaign, and it's when you've got a lot of things going on beneath you, you can't oversee them all, and it was one of those things that slipped through the cracks.
It's unfortunate, but it happens.
Yeah, and it was a long time ago. Let's continue here and talk to Jason, listening in Tallahassee to WFLA. Hello, Jason.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. Congressman Paul, I just want to say real quick, you're a great American, and I appreciate your service to our country. My question, real quick, is, earlier we were kind of discussing illegal immigration, and, I'm in agreement with you about protecting the borders. And when I see a state like California swamped in debt, how much does that have to do with welfare concerning immigrants when they come over here illegally? And, how much of a burden is welfare on the average American today, Congressman Paul, from the illegal immigrant? Thanks very much.
I think it's a big burden, and that's a big argument because there's also an economic benefit from illegal immigration because when the economy was booming, labor was short on some of these jobs, so there was a benefit. But there's been some studies that show there's a net cost. Besides, you're endorsing the illegal immigrations rather than a process where you allow to do it more orderly and reward people who follow the rules. But once you have a welfare state, immigration becomes a burden. If you had a free society and a libertarian society, I think immigration we could be very, very generous on immigration. But once you have welfare, we don't even have to go to California. I live in Texas, and I experienced this when I was practicing medicine that yes, you are required to give a lot of free medical services, and if you subsidize illegal immigrations by providing free education and free medical care, lo and behold, it's more likely that they'll bring their families over and have their children here, and it becomes more of a burden to us and more difficult to send them home.
Yeah, this was definitely something that we touched on the last time we talked to you during your presidential campaign, and people can go to our website, guests.freetalklive.com, find your picture, and they can listen to that prior interview. But this country was built on immigration and people coming here to make a better life for themselves, and I think you're right, Ron, that if there was no welfare program, and I don't just mean a welfare program for immigrants, I mean a welfare program, period. If there was no government welfare and it was all done by charities and other private groups, then we wouldn't have a problem with freeloaders.
And also that encourages some of our people not to take jobs that go begging, and then there's a demand for this labor. So it does not serve our purpose to have people dependent on others in a welfare system.
Let's talk to Chris, listening to WCHV in Charlottesville. Chris, you're on with Ron Paul.
Dr. Paul, given that the Democrat and the Republican Party are essentially the same in any practical sense, why do you think that your party can't get any greater national traction? I talk to tons of people who really agree with pretty much everything you say in principle, but it just doesn't seem like we can get any traction nationally.
Thanks, Chris.
For the Libertarian Party?
Oh, I think he's gone. But
I assume he means for the Libertarian Party,
or the RLC. I mean, the Republican Liberty Caucus.
Yeah. Well, I think we are making some progress. I think libertarian views are popular if they're delivered in the right manner. But the reason the party doesn't make it is make great advances is because of the rules and the laws that the Republicans and the Democrats write, getting on ballots and getting in the debates. I tried it in '88 as a Libertarian Party member and got very little coverage, but this time I got a lot more as a Republican. But I really have no qualms about people doing it wherever they feel most comfortable, get involved and promote their cause. But I'm more optimistic, if I understood what he said, than he might be, because I think the libertarian views are getting more popular now. That is what I sensed during the campaign, and it wasn't just because of my campaign. People have heard about this, and they've heard about the Fed, and they've heard about personal liberty. So I think I just touched on a nerve where people had already been thinking about it.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And one of the difficult parts, of course, is watching the Libertarian Party lose its way. I mean, it used to be the party of principle, but it doesn't seem so much anymore. Let's go to Andrew in Muscle Shoals, listening to WVNA. Andrew, you're on with Ron Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. I've got two questions, and they're pretty parallel. One, do you theoretically, which I know in practice it doesn't work, but do you theoretically agree with the government's use of the Clayton and Sherman Acts under antitrust? And parallel to that, would you be in favor of unions organized under simply free association with no special legal protection?
Good question.
Yes, I'm against antitrust laws. People should be allowed to do what they want as long as they use any force, and there should be no prohibition against working people banding together. I sometimes think that it might evolve into a system where maybe there would be competing unions, and business people would make contracts with those unions, but they should have every right in the world to organize. There should be no prohibition, but there should never be any compulsion that the businessman has to deal with them, and then the government decides exactly how the union comes about. 51% surely shouldn't have the right to make 100% of the workers belong to a union and then the contract be forced on some businessman. It tends to cause problems like we've seen recently in the auto industry. We saw it in the railroads. We saw it in the steel industry. So, no, I'd be against antitrust laws and voluntary unions.
Well said, Ron.
For voluntary unions.
A question from outside the U.S. They want to know, what can someone who doesn't live in the United States do to support the Campaign for Liberty?
Well, that is visit the site. And the main goal in the Campaign for Liberty is spread the message. And within the United States, of course, it's to get involved in politics and have an influence. But it's also educational, and wherever you are, whether you're in this country or out of the country, in Canada, I think having your own little group is very, very important, and finding out how many minds that you can change. And I think that's what's happening. Is the internet has been a real blessing because we've been able to spread a message, and it's actually a worldwide message right now.
That's why we're here right now. I mean, it's because of the internet that Free Talk Live exists and is as successful as it is. Let's talk to Dan in Arizona. Dan, you're on with Ron Paul.
It's because of the internet.
Oh, you got to turn down your radio, Dan. Turn it down. Turn it down.
Sorry, I apologize for that.
Go.
Thanks for taking my call. Yeah, I have a question, or just I'm a little confused on how a libertarian works in an international economy. So how would you deal with the SEC and the federal oversight of the banking system?
Well, you'd essentially not have any. You wouldn't have an SEC. You didn't have that before the 1930s. The Fed created the chaos of the 30s. They said it was a lack of regulation of capitalism, but it wasn't. It was caused by the Federal Reserve messing around with the money supply and interest rates and creating a bubble. So they come in with the SEC. So you don't want regulations like that. And people say, well, does that mean no regulations? You mean everybody does anything they want? No, the regulations come from the marketplace. I mean, if you don't provide a good product, you go out of business. If you commit fraud, you go to jail. Enron was taken care of pretty much with the marketplace by fraud laws, with state laws that were prosecuted here in Houston, Texas, and the market discounted the value of their stock. It went to zero. It was exposed for what they were, and they were gone. But today, with all these regulatory agencies trying to keep this economy together, it's stealing money from the poor and giving it to the rich, and planning to write more regulations to protect Wall Street and the rich bankers.
So, Ron, we are almost out of time here. Mark, you wanted to ask one more thing about the...
Yeah, I just want you to get a chance here to tell people what they can do to support your Audit the Fed bill. There's 200 and how many representatives backing it at this point?
And you've got 30 seconds to do it, Ron.
It's 273, I believe, very close to that. There's 16 senators. The main thing is work on the senators right now. And if you're a congressman... it can't be a Republican because they all have signed on. If you have a Democratic congressman that hasn't signed on, the more the merrier, and the better we will be able to negotiate when the time comes when they'll try to, cut us down or weaken the bill. So, yes.
Call your Congress critter.
Get hold of them and get them on the bill.
Hey, Ron, it's always so great talking to you, and keep up the great work out there and talking about freedom, okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Good night.
Good to be with you.
Hour 3 is on the way. If you're on the line, we'll get to you. You can talk about anything. Free Talk Live. DVD, books, music, instruments, periodicals, computers, software, electronic, photo, cell phone, office product, home and garden, bed and bath, furniture, kitchen, pet supply, automotive, hardware, apparel, shoes, jewelry, grocery, healthcare, sports and outdoors, toys, games, used, and more. It's a department store at your fingertips. Amazon.freetalklive.com. Get all your shopping done, a great deal, delivery to your door, and a percentage of your purchase will go to Free Talk Live when you enter Amazon through Amazon.freetalklive.com.